Well, I am Rokon Zaman. In terms of formal education, I graduated in electrical and computer engineering. I do teach at a university. I'm a professor there. In addition to my teaching, I have research engagement, particularly in the area of technology innovation and public policy, with a focus that how can we leverage technology far more to create new wealth so that a society keeps growing in a sustainable manner, because we have the challenge of creating more wealth from decreasing, depleting resources. And I do uh, share my thoughts through media and a publication platform called the webs. And I look forward to have a further discussion with Bruce on this matter.
Good. All right. Well, then, thank you for that intro. I'll introduce myself. I'm nowhere near as elevated as you are, or illustrious as you are. I have a background in technical writing, telecommunications engineering. I was a technician and doing maintenance of telephone exchanges. And I went on to technical writing because nobody else wanted to do technical writing. So I ended up getting that. And I got also into IT training. And in recent years, I got into all the emerging exponential technologies. Uh, for example, what Singularity University is putting up. I got very interested in those, and partly because of that, I did quite well with cryptocurrency because of being alerted to that. But I'm interested in all these technologies, and one of the subjects discussed in the Singularity fraternity, in the Abundance Digital fraternity, is policy. Now, I used to write a lot of policy as a technical writer and as an engineering associate. I didn't do it at the high levels that you did it, but I've always loved policy. I was involved with system development policy in the New Zealand Justice Department and the Department of Internal Affairs. So policy is an interest of mine, and I'll be interested here. Now, let me ask you, Rokon, what would you say your favorite recent discoveries and thinking is? I didn't prepare Rokon folks for this. I just put him on the spot. Do you have any particular ideas that you are especially interested in currently that you think are emerging in the world and that you would be, what are you speaking to your students about these days?
Well, I'd like to begin with that you know that the Global Innovation Index, GII, it is published by INSEAD, WIPO, and I think University of Cornell, and they use 80 indicators. And some developing countries, particularly India and Malaysia, made tremendous success in their ranking in Global Innovation Index. And you know, China has already occupied a fifth, a place even above Japan.
Oh, really? Who's
But
top? Who is top?
pardon me.
Who is top?
Switzerland. I suppose Switzerland is at the top.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
I
Sorry.
suppose Switzerland is at the top.
Okay.
And now you see, despite the progress of India or Malaysia in Global Innovation Index, there is no visible progress of this country on actually benefiting from innovation to drive their economic growth or social growth. Still, their economy is in a labor-centric valuation or exploitation of natural resources. That means this Global Innovation Index, what we think as a good way to measure a country's ability to improve its capability to benefit from ideas or technological ideas, it is not indicating the reality. On the other hand, Japan, though it is, you know, below China, but it has a tremendous success over the last 70 years in driving its economic growth out of technological ideas. Then
It
what
has
is the
no choice.
mission?
It has no choice because it has
I
no very little,
understand. I understand.
no
And
natural
what is the,
resources. It
yes,
imports like 90% of its oil and its energy. So it had to. So you're saying that it's done well because it had to.
yeah. So that then what is the gap in our understanding? This is the first thing I like to I got intrigued to. Then the second element. If we look into the history of last 150 years, invariably every great idea emerged in a primitive form, whether it was a Wright brothers aeroplane or Carl Benj's automobile. Each of them emerged in a very primitive form. Apparently, it was of no use. But some of those ideas in, in those countries developed as mega industries.
Hmm.
Like automobile produces now $4 trillion revenue. On the other hand, people in other parts of the world are equally creative. They also came up with some ideas like them, but none of them has grown as a good or big success story. Then where is the difference? Why is it happening like this? Why are some countries more conducive to growth of ideas and other countries are not? That is also intriguing to me. The third one.
So you think it's a cultural attitude to new
I
ideas?
think
Is that
that
what you're
it
saying?
that there is also a policy issue. Before I get into this, I would like
Yeah,
to also use a
yeah,
third point observation
yeah,
to
yeah,
get into the further discussion. Let's look into the Steve Jobs and Apple.
yeah.
Steve Jobs is considered as a magical performer in the innovation space, and we all know Apple is the most expensive company. By what? By commercializing ideas. But Apple did not invent any of those great ideas from where Apple is extracting huge wealth from the world. It didn't invent graphical user interface. It was not the first company to come up with portable music player. It was not the first company to come up with a smartphone either. Then how come? A company like Apple has been creating so much wealth by riding on the ideas of others. What it takes for
Perfect.
other companies to replicate similar successes. These are the three observations which
Very
have
interesting.
made me a bit intrigued to understand what it takes to succeed in ferreting out value from the market out of technological ideas, who is on along in the same time, who is helps a country, who is helps a community to keep increasing their living standard with the depleting resources. These are the three things which have been
Yeah.
driving me
Okay.
to learn
Okay.
more.
That's very interesting. I'm very interested in that. Particularly, I'm dying to know what your feelings are about the answer to that question, particularly question three. That is, if they're just using existing ideas, first of all, it must be choice of the ideas. They must be very good at choosing ideas and seeing the potential of those. So that's number one. The second thing is how they implement it and get it out to be a big success. What are your ideas on that?
Wait, that you have mentioned a very important point. That selecting an idea. That means innovation is not about experimenting with ideas in a random manner. That means there is some degree of discipline. And that discipline Apple has mastered far better than others. And that is the reason, with only a limited number of products, they are succeeding to extract so much value from the market. And they have a hardly a history of failing with their product in the market. That means they are very methodical in selecting ideas. You are exactly correct. The second element, implementation. That means they are not just copying an idea and reproducing it. Rather, they are looking into complementary ideas which can enhance the initial idea, and they are looking into the technology and acquiring the technology and fine tuning it to a level where nobody can match. So their strength is on adding complementary ideas
Yeah, okay.
and
So this is
defining that.
yeah. So this is a value package. They go out to the market. They've looked at a few ideas, but for each idea that they're considering, they go to the market, find out who likes it as it is, and also ask lots of questions about what would you like better about it, how would you improve it, and by that time they've got a very good idea of what the product needs to be, and then they work on that, and then they put it out, and then they hold the hand of the customer afterwards, so the customer and monitor carefully to make sure the customer is getting what they thought they were going to get. That they will tell their friends, so there's word of mouth um, expansion of the product.
You are very much correct. That uh, that is a place, and moreover, they do not do conventional market research. They do not go and speak to customer that what you want. Rather, they
Okay.
feel what customer might want. They feel the internal desire of customers.
So
Then
that's
they
even
innovate.
so that's not even looking at a particular product. That's going out looking for needs, even before there's a product. So they're looking out
That's
for needs, right?
And that is the thing, what I tried to understand, that then how do they succeed to do that? Then it came to my mind, my observation is this: you need passion for perfection. You need passion for perfection and empathy to understand customers' desire or need to get their jobs done. So this passion for perfection and empathy should be the first thing someone should have, or a community should have, or a group should have, to figure out what the thing they should innovate to make people's life far more better than before. And that
Uh,
seems to be one observation I have come up
yeah.
with.
See, that's very interesting because I used to work a bit in AI and just expert systems, nothing, no neural nets or anything like that. But I'm very interested currently in assembling a suite of maybe 10 to 100 known products that I could possibly deploy or tell other people they could deploy for all kinds of purposes. The stock ones like facial recognition or customer satisfaction or a voice interface, these things. There's a whole suite of probably 100 out there. I only know a handful of them. But back to what you're talking about, the a highly desirable AI would be one that you could sit on Facebook and say to it, come back with needs. Go out there, listen to thousands of messages, tell me what people seem to need. Then I'll examine it. So AI must have a part to play in this.
I think, Bruce, you are very much correct. Now, regarding to your that hobby project, that is a concertina,
Yeah.
what is your stake on that?
Uh,
Uh,
it, I'm going to show the audience a picture of it, if you can bear with me for a second, just so they know what I'm talking about. A concertina is a musical instrument. Oh, in fact, I'll show you one.
Good.
This, this is a musical instrument that was created in 1862. And you press the buttons. I won't play it, but you press the buttons and you get notes. It has not been updated for 180 years. It's pretty much the same as it always was. Now, I have been playing. I play it partly to keep my old brain active, but because I love music. But I thought over the 10 years that I've been playing it every day, I thought, don't be an idiot. Why don't you get it converted? Why don't you update it? This is 2019, 2010. Why don't you make it electronic instead of bellows with pushing air and things? I mean, this is the 20s, the 10s and 20s. How is it you're playing an instrument that's so old and you haven't updated? So to cut a long story short, I thought it would be a fun project because I love projects. Why don't I see if I can design? I will first of all write the requirement specification of it, what it should be, just like Apple. I'm saying I want it to be not have to push and pull because that's interrupting. I want it to be lightweight. I want it to be electronic. I want to have many voices, not just one voice like that. I want it to be cheap enough. This one, if you want to buy this will cost you $2,000, $3,000 for an old junky instrument. I want everybody who can afford a guitar to be able to afford a concertina nova. It's called concertina nova. My stake in it is, first of all, just the fun of playing. I love playing it. I've developed over that time a group of 500 people who are keen concertina players, and they are interested in following this, and the prototype is going to come out within about a month of now. So, but my interest is mainly for fun. As a player, I'd like to be able to play better, make better music. It's good for my brain. It's not a commercial project. I asked my Maryland lawyers if they would be able to patent it, and to cut a long story short, they said, no, you can't. There's too many other things out there that like that. So we have given up on any idea of commercializing it, but we do want to 3D print it. We want to make it available to all teenagers who go on a walk or play on a bus with their friends. So it's a fun project. That's my stake.
That's a good thing to get it. That is you are enjoying certain things which has a entertainment part, technology
Yeah.
part, and is a quite a bit of a nice history behind that. That's extremely nice to know. Now,
It,
you mentioned very important thing. that almost over 100 years, this product didn't go through any major redesign, or
Correct.
this invention didn't go through any redesign. But we see some other products which go through very frequent redesign. So some products do remain at the same stage, and other products rapidly evolve. What's the kind of a determining factor that at what rate certain products
Well,
would keep evolving?
it depends on depends on the culture around. Like the
Mhm.
concertina culture has been. I have to be careful here because I don't want to insult the people who have been building concertinas, but they have been digging the wrong hole deeper and deeper for 180 years. For example, they make the concertina prettier and more elegant, and maybe the sound quality improves, but they have not much looked at doing an electronic version. People who play the concertina tend to be traditional kinds of people. They're not technologists. They're people who play at a dance and with their friends. They're not really intellectuals. You know what I mean? There are a few. So, but the telephone. Let's come back to the telephone. You're asking about other products. The telephone had the tremendous benefit of joining people together, massive numbers of people together. I think that was what drove the telephone to explode the way it did. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm there. There was a little bit of a disconnect. Now it has come back. Okay. I can't hear you.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear
Okay.
you.
Now
Can
we are. Now the link is working. I think
okay.
you referred to two important things. One thing is that consumer preferences. That means the people who are playing it or enjoying it, they were not very much in a preference to see a big change. Second thing is that technology was changing, and technology could make it better, but due to these consumer preferences, they were not embarking on the journey of changing the technology core of that innovation. So it seems to me there are four major elements which influence. I would say that the evolution of a product. The first one is technology. Second one is the consumer preferences. Third is the competition, and the fourth is the infrastructure. So, and that may be the reason that every product doesn't grow to the same level of evolution.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, the competition here is the guitar. The guitar has been hugely successful. So the
Successful.
concertina is left behind.
Mhm. That was because guitar, I think it was playing a substitution role to concertina. So people are
Yep.
playing more with guitar and the
Everyone, if you go to a
concertina.
campfire, if you go for a walk with 10 friends to a mountain, one of them will have a guitar on the back of their pack, and they will play it and they'll sing and they'll get the girl because they're playing the guitar. But the concertina was expensive to buy. The guitar is affordable. And nobody, and I have to say, you use the word technology there as a factor. Only in recent years has there been electronic circuit boards that could transform this at a reasonable
Mhm.
price into an electronic version.
Mhm. Bruce, you are in Auckland. Am I correct?
In Palmerston North, in the middle of the North Island of New Zealand. I am in New Zealand.
Oh,
Yeah,
you are in New Zealand, and you
yeah,
see, New Zealand is a very resourceful country. It has a wonderful education system, and also government generously invests in research, academic research. But New Zealand is not as innovative as some other countries like Germany
right, right, right,
or Japan or
right,
US.
right.
I do wonder why is holding a little bit New Zealand, a little
Well,
back, in
let
the
me suggest something. An Indian woman arrived off a plane in Auckland. She said, "Where are all the people?"
So
That's the answer. That's the answer.
so
People move to the city so that they can share ideas richly. New Zealand has only got 5 million people in the whole place.
whole space, it highly, it's kind of sparsely populated. So population is a point
Yeah,
here.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
but now let's come to India. I think you may have some idea about India. India has a very large population on the other hand. you know On the other hand, India has a huge population. It is a quite a densely populated country. But India's track record in innovation is not at all impressive, particularly if you compare European countries, America or
Yeah.
US, sorry, or the Japan. Then India's performance is not at all impressive. On the other hand, some Indians are working in a very high profile technology companies in a top position. Then why
Yeah.
is India failing to create similar success stories in
I
India?
think if you want my answer to that, I would say,
Mm,
if I tell you the concept absolute thought, absolute rigid thought, it is
mm,
often in religions and in many cultures, but firm, non-flexible thinking is a major reason why innovation does not take place. Now, in
mm,
New Zealand and America and Switzerland, there's a lot of lateral communication and freedom and defiance of authority and all that sort of stuff. Confusion, chaos. Out of that comes innovation. But if you have people who dare not disagree with the next person up or the people around them, you won't get as much innovation. There is punishment for innovation. I think that is the case in India. I'm not sure, but that's what it looks like from me, from my point of view.
kind of a cultural issue you are saying is holding them
Yeah,
back.
yeah. I'm saying when I use the term absolute thinking. When I mean absolute thinking, I mean people are told in religions and various cultures they must believe this and this and this, and if they don't believe that, and they do not question, must not question it, then they will be excluded. So the idea
Mm,
of compliance and conformity is very important. Now, New Zealand is lucky enough to have abundant natural resources. We threw out a lot of our religion. There are still a lot of people in the churches, but not so many. Maybe a tenth of the number of people, or 20th of the number of people now go to church or the mosque even than they did when I was a child. So this
mm.
absolute thinking, you must believe this and this and this, and you must not question it, and don't ask too many questions, that has gone away more. We're allowed to communicate, argue, disagree, and so on. But where
I
you have
understand.
strong,
I think that's a very good point. But let's look into Japan.
yeah,
Japan is a very conservative society.
yes,
There is a high degree loyalty to their
right,
seniors,
right,
and corporations are managed with a kind of authoritarian rules.
yeah.
But Japan's success story in innovation over the last 100 years, it seems to be quite impressive. So how can a conservative society, which is managed in some degree authoritarian form, is flourishing in this innovation space?
I can only guess at that. It's a very interesting question because I was watching a Japanese video a couple of nights ago, and the people were beautiful. They were humble, they were respectful, and I love the Japanese people in that
Mm,
way. But it is in conflict with that they would be innovative. Now, we in New Zealand, a lot of us used to criticize them for stealing ideas off the West, especially off America. Like they took the electronics industry
mm,
off the United States. That was partly because of a guy, what's his name? Uh, a famous statistician went over from America after the Second World War, and he helped them build up the idea of quality of products. What was his name? You might know. Anyway,
Are you referring to Dr. Deming? Are you referring to
Deming,
Dr. Deming?
yeah. Wonderful, yeah, wonderful. So he told them the discipline of quality, but I don't think that he taught innovation. That we in New Zealand, I don't really want to speak for New Zealand, but there was a common belief that a lot of Japan's ideas came from the USA, including the electronics industry. The quality might have done it. They might have stolen off it. And same with the car industry. They took the car industry off by doing what America did, but much better with the quality.
Well, Bruce, if you allow me, let me shed little light on this conversation. You see, it is well, I think, accepted across the world that the Japanese took ideas from Americans. And to some degree, it is true. It seems to be. But let me just bring two examples into the discussion to
Yeah,
figure out how did they profit from ideas of others. How did they profit from ideas of others? Look, in 1947, transistor was invented.
yeah,
In 1952, Sony took license of that.
Yeah.
And at that time, transistor was in a very primitive form.
Okay.
And even American companies were not very serious about transistor. Look into RCA. RCA
Mm-hmm.
felt it was of no use for their products like radios, telephones, they were making. Because it used to a transistor could handle
Yeah.
little energy,
Right.
and it was noisy, and it was signal was highly noisy, and
Yeah.
now and then needs to break. So RCA was not very serious,
Right.
but Sony became very serious.
Yeah.
And Sony took a license and then made the transistor, and the transistor was not good enough. Then what to do with that?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. But
And
that's is
transistor,
that innovation? But when I talk
and
about
that is
Deming, the
that is
reason I
a,
mentioned Deming is because Deming talked about quality. So all
a,
Japan didn't need to be innovated. Well,
Mhm.
it had to be sort of fix it, innovated, but it didn't have to invent the original concept. All it had to do was make a better transistor radio or a better car. They can say to the Yanks, "Thanks for the thanks for the transistor. We'll make it good. Thanks for the car. We'll make decent ones. We'll outsell you."
Uh, and that is the place you see. Then Sony embarked onto serious R&D in making transistor better and cheaper.
Right.
And this journey created the success out of the idea what they licensed from Americans. And even they made American companies bankrupt, like RCA. RCA, they kicked out RCA from radio and television business. No, uh, and the second one is a microwave oven. You have microwave oven in your home, and many
Yeah.
millions of
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
households
Right.
have
Right.
microwave oven, even in
Yeah.
developing countries.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you even come to Dhaka city, virtually every household in Dhaka city has a microwave oven. You see, this microwave oven was invented by Raytheon, that is an American company.
Yeah.
This technology was invented, then the product was innovated and released in 1947. And it was a very bulky product. It is to weigh 700 pounds,
Yeah.
price, and Raytheon priced it at $5,000. So virtually it was of no use to anybody. And only a few hotels and others, they were buying this product like they have a technology miracle which can heat up your hamburger within 30 seconds or like that. But you see, Japanese looked into it, and they figure out there could be a market of this product in Japan, because Japan has a culture of frequently heating food, but the product must be far smaller
Right.
and less costly.
Right.
Then they embarked on serious research, and they came up with a far smaller microwave tube that led to your
Right.
tabletop a
Right.
microwave
Microwave.
oven at a price
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
$500.
Right. Right. Right.
So yeah, Japan succeeded not by copying the idea, rather Japan succeeded by advancing the idea what American had.
Yeah, that's right. I
So
have to say that the improvement itself was richly endowed with creative thinking by the Japanese. But
that's correct.
I mean, I read a book called The Mind of the Japanese, wonderful book, and the compliance of Japanese, the honorable respect for others, and putting the self down for the community, that would be quite okay in the innovation because they would be serving Japan. They would be serving each other. They would be cooperating with each other to do it. They wouldn't be wild-eyed hippies having crazy ideas. They'd just be saying, Sumi-san, I suggest we do this with the wiring at the back because that will reduce the weight by a bit. And also, they would be cooperating in a very collaborative, very humble, very community sort of way. There probably was some discouragement of people being too prominent. But even so, they succeeded very well. A great deal of very clever innovation to succeed in the way you're talking about.
And if that is the place, I think you mentioned very well that once they agree on to pursue something, then they would collaborate in a humble way, in a loyal way. And this humble and loyal collaboration is vital in fine tuning an idea, because it requires the meticulous work over years, even decades,
Yeah,
to reach your goal. And if you do
yeah,
not have this humble, respectful
yeah,
collaboration, then the
yeah.
journey would not sustain for such a
Right,
long period of time.
right,
Like you see, Sony took the license of CCD from Bell Laboratory, but it took almost 12 years of research to turn that crude idea into a useful sensor technology around which you could innovate a video recorder or video camera. And this 12 years of journey was a very uncertain journey. And
Yeah.
certainly it needed very patient, meticulous,
Yeah.
and loyal
Yeah.
collaboration. Otherwise, you cannot sustain this 12 years long journey without
But one
seeing any visible result.
Rokon, one thing that fascinates me, I agree with what you're saying. One thing that fascinates me is the stories about Silicon Valley, where people
Mhm.
say, "Where's Charlie?" and and they say he's gone. He's working for another company now. Like
Okay.
it happens so fast. There's no loyalty. But there's the fascinating contrast between the loyal Japanese, faithful for 40 years, Kaisha man, the company man,
That
in
I think
contrast with
you have brought another nice and I dimension to this discussion. That in contrast to Japanese, if you look into Silicon Valley, you will see a complete opposite picture.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
there is no loyalty. People do walk in and walk out, and they keep creating success stories. How do they do it? That's a, I think, very intriguing, I think, observation. If you allow me, let me share my little understanding on that.
yeah,
If you look into Silicon Valley's success, it is primarily rooted into the amenability of silicon, of rapidly becoming better and cheaper.
yeah,
So the underlying strength of the silicon of making transistor increasingly better and cheaper, giving the birth of Moore's law, was one of the reasons that you can basically transfer your idea into a product, and very quickly you can
yeah,
recover the investment.
yeah.
So they do not wait for 5 years, 10 years to let their ideas to grow as a
Right.
product. Rather, within 6 months, within 1 year, they recover the investment. And that is the reason high turnout rate is not as harmful as in a case where you need a 10 years long journey or 20 years long journey to turn your idea into revenue. That is one thing which comes to my mind. The second thing, you see, Japanese were latecomer in electronics. They didn't invent a transistor, they didn't invent a CCD, they didn't invent many more things. But Japanese companies became successful to make some American companies bankrupt. In the contrary, there is no example, high level example, where Americans succeeded to make Japanese companies bankrupt in the space of electronics. Rather, other way around is Japanese. That means high loyalty has made them stronger, even Americans, where they work on ideas which were invented by Americans.
I'm confused because when I think of Deming going over after the Second World War, he made a
Mhm.
big difference. They've even got statues of him in the foyer of one of the big
Mhm.
corporations. So I mean, you could say that his idea of quality circles and quality in statistics was a kind of American idea. You could say he was teaching it to them. Then it came from America, even that. But then it was used to defeat the electronics industry of the United States and the car industry as well.
Mhm.
So I'm confused by that. America did, well, I don't know. I think Mr. Deming himself gave that to Japan, and Japan benefits hugely.
I have a one another thing which came to my mind. That is US defense played a positive role to the growth of the American technology industry. But it also gave it a little bit of an easy path to create the success. Because you see that the first batch of transistor, what Fairchild came out, each of them was priced as $150,
Okay.
and there was no commercial customer. Then U.S. Department Defense showed up and bought that and built the computer for their fighter jets. On the other hand, Japanese companies had only one option, that is to sell consumers. They had no preferential defense market entry because of the agreement they came up after the Second World War.
Right.
So they had to be far more serious on quality to make a sale to consumers for a technology product for which Americans are finding far easier way to sell to defense market. So, in one hand, defense helped American technology industry to grow. On the other hand, it also made them a little less serious on the quality part, and that is
Yeah.
maybe the reason they were not very much adhering to Deming's preaching that you should be very serious on quality because money was rather easily coming from defense contracts.
Yeah. Okay. Now that's an important point because
That
I think that the DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects, and defense in general,
Mhm.
because the United States, it
Mhm.
has as its icon, as its mascot, a
Mhm.
predatory eagle. It is the world's biggest predator. You know, it can say it's the police of the world, but it's really a predator. And
Mhm.
the thing is, I mean, we might like to say, that's terrible. We want to all be brothers and live in peace. But the reality of the universe is competitive survivalism, and cultural survivalism included, national survivalism, military survivalism. There is no greater motivation for technology than the fear of being nuked or bombed or taken over. So when the Defense Department says we need money, the public of the United States more or less say, okay, how much do you want?
That's even correct.
Now Japan,
You are correct. You take as
Japan,
much as you want.
yeah, yeah, that's right. The Japan doesn't have that problem because it's agreed that they were thrashed in the Second World War, and they're not allowed to
Mhm.
really have a big defense force. It's been loosened up recently, but they didn't have that. They were under the
Moreover,
umbrella of the
they
USA.
were not forced to buy defense equipment from Americans as per
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
agreement.
yeah. Right, right.
They couldn't
So
develop it.
they're still a conquered people in that regard. China is a different story. I mean, I fear that China will, like all cultures, want to expand, become more powerful, and militarily. I mean, people said, oh, China hasn't been at war with people for a long time. That's because they haven't been in charge. But once they get in charge, they'll say, we need to protect our interests, and they'll go just as military or more than the USA, I think. What do you think?
I think you are correct on that on that front, and probably we can draw some lesson from these journeys. You see, we have discuss we have discussed about India, we have discussed about Japan, we have discussed US, and also the role of the defense and the China. Now you see, if we little bit focus on another area, like a country, Bangladesh or Vietnam or Philippines, which or Indonesia even, which has a very little per capita natural resource. And these countries recently grew mostly through the commercialization of labor. Uh, and now these countries would like to grow further. Then they need to figure out how can they transfer ideas into economic value or economic or the wealth. Now, the lesson what we get from India or China or Japan or America, that how they should pursue the, I would say, journey, or how should they strategize to uplift their economic wealth creation capacity from natural resource labor to ideas. What does come to your mind? I mean, what is the,
My answer to that is, at 5 years old, when the kid goes to school, they are taught reasonable thinking. They are taught how to reason. They read a book called Straight and Crooked Thinking by Guy Thorless. They read Bertrand Russell and others, and they learn how to think. They learn how to be innovative. They are taught by Edward de Bono, his creative lateral thinking. They are taught that at age 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 10, as at every level, not starting just with the 5 year olds, but starting at every level of school. You remove 1 hour a day of whatever they're doing. You scrap 1 hour of their day at all levels, and you do the same in the workplace. And you teach them all how to think. That's and then you expose them to things like physics, chemistry, biology, maths, all that sort of stuff as well. But I think that the supreme power is intellectual ability to think reasonably towards a useful conclusion.
I think it's a very important point. That means the building the thinking capability. In addition to that, uh, if you look into big success stories in Japan like Sharp Corporation or Canon or Toshiba, all of them virtually were started by tinkerers who were school dropouts, even not a high
Yeah,
school
right,
dropouts, primary
right,
school dropouts.
right.
But they were instrumental in playing with ideas and making certain things and selling them and eventually seeding the formation of such innovation success stories.
Yeah,
So should also these countries concentrate on building tinkering, craftsmanship, passion
yes.
for perfection
I think
among
so.
them?
Yeah,
the young stars.
I hasten to say that within 2 or 3 years, the Starlink network of satellites all over the world is going to give quite good, like 100 megabit per second internet to everyone on the planet. That is
Mhm.
superb. That is going to massively improve their circumstances.
Mhm.
But
Okay.
I tell you one thing, one reason why it would be, shall we say, challenging to introduce the idea of teaching children how to think and how to do creative thinking, both reasonable
Mhm.
and logical thinking, and creative thinking like De Bono teaches, is that
And turning their ideas into little artifacts through their tinkering and
excellent, excellent. But I'm going to
that,
say,
that would fine tune their
yeah,
process of creative
excellent, really good
thinking.
point, good point. You've got to make it applied, so they learn how to think. Then that's applied. Every lesson has got
Mhm.
applied uses. But I was going to say, the challenge of it is the status quo stakeholders. For example, the local priest will disapprove.
Mhm.
The tohunga or the shaman will not like it because it breaches their authority. Thinking
Mhm.
challenges authority. So
I think that's
you
a
know what I'm
very
saying?
good point. See, you see, recently it has been found that India's scientific publication has overtaken the Japanese publication record. But India is barely converting those scientific publications into economic output because they are just, outputs of a formal approach of producing something having no or little relevance with the improving any product or any practical thing to make
Okay.
people's life better.
That's very interesting. That's very interesting. Because, one of the dilemmas in my life is how much should I retire? Because I retired from my job in 2012. How much should I be retired? Mow the lawns, enjoy life, and how
Hmm.
much should I be a go getter? And my answer to myself is I've decided half of my life is going to be being a normal human being retired and enjoying a normal life. But the other half is still going to be a very avid follower of Singularity University and Abundance Digital and the exponential technologies and virtual reality and AI and all that sort of stuff. So I'm going to
Hmm.
have the best of both worlds. But the question is, how much does a person want to live life as it is? I mean, a lot of Indian culture is live life as it is. Zen and Buddhism and many cultures say you're going to die anyway. Enjoy the flowers. That's a reasonable position. But the West will say, no, no, no. Somebody will kill you if you don't do that. You've got to build weapons and you've got to defend yourself and you've got to have better technology and better cars. You might have heart attacks and stress and kill each other, but you know what I'm saying? It's the dilemma
Yeah,
between
I
living
got me.
life and go getting.
I think that's the philosophy part of life is quite important. That how would like to have your life and enjoy your life and make your life meaningful. I think that has a quite a bit of a strong role to
Yeah.
play.
I think we are heading, I'm thrilled to see the suggestion of the universal basic income. I would love to see that arrive globally. And
Mhm.
I can imagine that it might. Everybody having $1,000 US a month and
Mhm.
no questions asked. Even if they have to print it, get the government to print it. I don't care. Give everybody 1,000 a month so they don't have to worry. They don't have to become thieves and burglars and go to jail. They don't get stressed. And they will
Mhm.
then unleash their minds to do the kinds of things that you're talking about, to be innovative. Why don't we make some better shoes? Why don't we make better cell phones? Why don't we make better houses? They'll do it because they get bored just watching TV. And the ones that want to watch TV all day long, fine, let them.
Mhm. I think let them explore their minds, their passion, their thinking. I think that would keep probably unlocking new possibilities which are not known to us at this point in time. I think that's a very good point. Another point I think probably you should touch upon in this discussion. You see that the dawn of the fourth industrial revolution, there is some degree of apprehensiveness across the world. there could be mass unemployment due to the uprising of intelligent machines in the form of a robot car or robotics or many other things.
Mm.
But it seems to be a little bit of in contrast to the last two industrial revolutions, which created far more jobs than were lost. Are people mistakenly perceiving the likely consequence of fourth industrial revolution, or it might be the true that there could be a bleak reality in the job market in the next 50 years or so? How does it come
Yeah,
to your
I
mind?
mean, I'm a follower of Peter Diamandis in the Abundance Digital fraternity. Which are you a member of
Mhm.
that, buddy, Jim? It's an excellent fraternity. It costs about 1,000, 2,000 US to join it. So it's not cheap, but basically that and the Singularity fraternity are quite optimistic about the future, and they suggest that technology, although it seems that they will replace jobs, will not. It will create more jobs. It will create wealth, which can then be given around, spread around a lot more. That's their position. And after living as an ecology enthusiast for many, many years, it was a relief to me to mix with this abundance digital fraternity and the Singularity University as well. Singularity Technologies, you can look them up and you can join. They're free. But basically, they say, look at the trends, look at the graphs of poverty, it's going down. Look at the spread of the internet, look at health, it's improving over the 100 years. They say the media have given a false impression of the demise of humanity because you get more ratings if you present fearful news, because people then rush to glue themselves to the media to find out. You get more attention if you're negative than if you're positive. So Diamandis and Kurzweil and so on, they say it's not true. The media are making it look true, but it's not. They're saying there will be more jobs. They're talking about abundance. They're talking about the future of abundance. I mean, at the moment, look at how many people moved off the farms into the city. Did they starve in the city? No, they got jobs. They weren't high paid jobs for a start, but they had a better standard of living. They didn't go back to the farms. Now only about 3% of people in the West are on farms. So, what are they doing? Well, they're system analysts and they're professors of engineering. It's much better work instead of pushing a plow up and down a field all day long. So I'm optimistic. I may be wrong, but
Thank you. I think we need to be optimistic, of course, because, and you mentioned rightly that oftentimes media use the negativism to create
yeah,
the interest
yeah,
among
yeah.
readers,
I,
and they
I
do.
have to say,
But
well,
I also attempted to try to understand that is there any trend, or is there any mega trend into the way technology progresses and society transforms? So what seems to me that during the first industrial revolution and second industrial revolution also, human roles of providing energy into the production was taken over by the machine. Then in the third industrial revolution, what happened? That in the past, an artisan used to make the whole product. Artisan used to design the product, make the product, finish the product.
yeah,
Then they, with their Adam Smith theory of job division and specialization, then Taylor's that is production line concept, what did they do? They divided the big job into pieces, and they arrange them in a production line. Then they build some machineries to perform some repetitive and a little bit of a tiring part of it, and
yeah,
left other parts to human. And as a result, what happened? The complexity in adding a value to a product reduced. As a result, it created jobs for many semi-skilled or unskilled people. So people are migrating from rural areas and finding jobs in factories with having a maybe 2 months, 3 months or training, or even maybe the on-job training. That was good enough. And that created a large number of jobs for many people who didn't have any formal experience or formal education for that. Now, what is happening, it seems to me that in this fag end of the third industrial revolution, that codified knowledge is being automated with the software and many other things. Already, energy giving role has been taken over by machine. Human beings are no longer recruited to provide energy in the production. So most of the productive jobs are demanding innate abilities of human. Like human beings can see things, human beings can separate certain things from others, and there be innate abilities. Now it seems that progress is being made to automate that innate abilities. That
Yeah, right.
means that automate that innate abilities. You see that even 20 years ago, there was a strong kind of a conviction that computer vision or machine vision can never be comparable to human eyes
Right,
because of the high density of your of image sensor of your retina.
right.
Now you have a 48 megapixel camera with your
Yeah, yeah,
smartphone, and
yeah,
that camera has
yeah.
far more image sensor than your
Right, right.
retina has. And now there is a software part that they are working on, and it seems to be many innate abilities for which human beings are found to be indispensable in production
Yeah,
now
yeah.
are being taken over by machine. So
Sure.
basically, human beings have three means to add value in a production. First one is the energy it gives. Second one is about its memorization capability, communication capability, and the manipulability of fingers and others. That's of that. And the next one is the innate abilities. And now gradually, technology is taking over all those abilities. As a result, what is happening? Production is becoming far more precise. Production is making far less wastage than before. So we will be having more wealth than what we had before.
Right.
So wealth production part maybe we will be in a far better stage. But what about the wealth distribution stage? Because through the employment we distribute the wealth. So if a human role becomes non-relevant into production, then how will you bring human beings into the loop of getting a share of the wealth? What so we are going to create out of technology-led production management
All right.
system
Well,
or production
let
system?
me let me try to answer that, and I'll answer sort of from the point of view of the abundance, digital fraternity, and singularity universe,
Mhm.
and Neuralink and Elon Musk, all that stuff. I think what's going to happen is just as we mechanized the farms and that freed everybody to do other things, so we are going to. You're right. We're going to mechanize vision, hearing, smell, taste, all those things. They are basic functionalities. And you can say, well, what about empathy between humans? So
Mhm.
that will be one of the last bastions of what you might call humanity that we will automate. But we are already doing it. So where does that leave humans? Do we shoot ourselves? No, we don't. What we do is we merge with AI. In other words, we bring the AI into our heads so that we are way more than just biological beings. We are at first a hybrid between the biological and the cyborg, and eventually, I would say, we leave behind our biological beings and we are a different kind of human. But I assure you, from my reading and thinking about this, the new cyborg will be way more human and valuable than any of us are. It will have vastly better visual perception and cognition. It will have better olfactory abilities, better hearing. So its inputs will be richly greater. The same thing as much as you can perceive, that more can you be perceptive and human and empathetic with others. So that's just perception, right? Now, cognition as well. Let's say that your cognition is not just resident inside this stuff here, but it's also connected by Neuralink to the cloud as well. So you have instant access to the whole cloud and to countless other beings. So you are able to be wiser in the deepest senses than you are now. You're not limited to one box full of flesh in here or brain in there. And thirdly, the third part of being human, eminently lovable and human and empathetic, is how well you can express yourself. Now, at the moment, we're limited by these typing fingers, by this voice box here, and by our gestures. But when we are in a cyborg body, we will be freed of all the limitations of this is a wonderful body. It's articulated at the fingers and wrists and hands. It's magnificent for what evolution has done in the last 3.5 billion years. But when we have intellectual power to arbitrarily choose whether I have 3 arms or 10 arms, or I'm this big, or I'm a big waterside crane. When we can reside as a software in any imaginable host, we can be eminently greater and admirably more human than we are now in this flesh box.
I think you have raised a very important element. I picked 2 points from your deliberation. The first one is that humans' abilities, it seems not, it is not, it appear to be not well understood by us. Some of the things what we are thinking that we can easily automate, probably it would not be that easy. Let me give you an example. Like an autonomous vehicle. So far, more than $80 billion has been invested to develop autonomous capability. And after the making such an investment, they are figuring out it is awfully difficult to imitate certain subtle aspect of human capability, like your eye contact with the of your neighboring drivers or
Right,
the pedestrian.
right.
Very subtle. It seems to be very trivial. It doesn't require any formal training,
Yeah.
education, but it happens to be you frequently use them to collaborate, to communicate, to share resources, and that seems to be awfully difficult. This is one thing. One point comes into that. Human beings' innate abilities seems to be not well understood, and maybe we are over claiming technology abilities to take them over. This is the first thing. Second thing, you mentioned that I think in the last leg, what I tried to understand, human beings are more than the blood and the flesh. We have so many capabilities which are not limited in the materialistic representation of our human body, like our empathy, like your love, affection, care, our thinking ability, our idea generation ability, which are not limited to the material part of our body. It is something probably we have not started to understand them well yet. And perhaps as we keep delegating kind of mundane roles to machines, we will free ourselves to explore that part of human capability or a human endowment, and that would probably make us more human than the machine, because that will free us from mundane activities and focus on a very, very softer part of human life. That
Well,
seems
okay.
comes
Yeah,
to
okay.
my mind.
The first one you said that our ability to detect subtle things like the raise of an eyebrow from the other driver, there
Mhm.
already is software that will do facial recognition as
Mhm.
people walk past an advertisement. It will
Mhm.
tell you with better reliability than a human will whether people
Mhm.
like that product. So the
Mhm.
facial recognition is getting very good. I mean, the sentiment in the face.
It is
I'm not,
improving
oh,
for
yeah, yeah.
sure.
I mean, see, the way, I'm not sure how much you know about AI and how it works, but the AI uses what's called a corpus or a corpus. And
Mhm.
basically, it has a camera looking at 1 million people for 100 hours.
Mhm.
And it looks at the rules of what those faces are doing, and
Mhm.
then it figures out how they behave afterwards, and it makes rules about what the raise of an eyebrow means. It gets an idea,
Mhm.
it doesn't know at the start, but when it sees
Mhm.
millions and millions of raising of eyebrows, and then the consequent behavior, whether somebody hits somebody or whether somebody smiles, it gets a pretty good idea, a bunch of rules about
Mhm.
how human behaves. And just briefly, as far as visual perception is concerned, AI can recognize cancers in x-rays better than any human can now. It's not perfect, but it's better than human. And the other thing about finishing just here about empathy, we already in the medical sciences know about oxytocin and the endocrine system. It is a chain, dare I say, it is a mechanical chain of biological and molecular changes that is very predictable. If I injected you with, right now, if I injected your arm with a whole lot of oxytocin, you'd become very affectionate. And if I
I think,
injected you with,
and
if
I
I
understand. I
inject you with
that
adrenaline or histamine,
I
you'd get
understand that.
frightened.
Mhm. That there has been tremendous progress in this area. Anyway, it seems to be almost an hour we have been
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We've
discussing.
gone a bit over time.
Now, perhaps you can gradually take this kind of a session to a reasonable good conclusion. So
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
sure.
leaving to you
Is there
to have.
anything else you wanted to say, Rokon? Thank you. I've enjoyed this. Is there anything you wanted to finish off with?
And that's my last point is that so far technology innovation has been monopolized by few countries, few farms, and most of the countries are basically supplying natural resources and labor. And as a result, it seems to be the global development does not seems to be very uniformly distributed. On the other hand, you see that sustainable development issue to live, reasonably well on this planet, with our 7 or 8 billion fellow human beings, need to consume far more wealth than before, and our natural stock is not increasing. So we need to keep meeting growing consumption with a fewer and fewer resources. So it seems that we need to figure out how to empower all countries, all communities to exploit their ideas, to exploit the science and technology to create increasing wealth, causing less harm to the environment, to the planet, to the climate. And that would make our development as a human race, I would say, more human, more sustainable. And so my last basically, I would say that quest and also the humble, I would say, request to all of us, that let's try to figure out what it takes to succeed in innovation and how to make it democratized so that the whole world has far better, I would say, participation in it
Yeah,
to make
yeah,
the world far more
yeah.
prosperous and
I'm
far more.
hoping that the Starlink that Musk is putting up to give everybody the ability to have internet, I hope it will facilitate what you're talking about, so he might contribute. Anyway, thank you, Rokon. It was an enjoyable
It
discussion.
was nice, Bruce, to meet you
Yeah,
first time, and I think we had a wonderful discussion. I enjoyed it
wonderful session.
thoroughly,
Yeah,
and
great stuff.
it has been a pleasure to meet you, and hope to
Right.
have further discussion.
I will put this onto YouTube. I'll put it onto YouTube so that other people can see it
And
if they
share the
want to,
link with me. It
and
would
I'll
be
share that with you. All right.
thank
Good
you
to
very
see you,
much.
Rokon.
Have a good
Okay.
day.
Bye.
Bye bye.